Gong Hei Fa Choi. Happy Lunar New Year, everybody, and welcome to our regular Bellevue City Council meeting for February 16th, 2021. City Clerk, could you do the roll call, please?
Thank you. Mayor Robinson?
I'm here.
Deputy Mayor Neuenhaus?
Here.
Councilmember Barksdale?
Here.
Councilmember Lee?
Here.
Councilmember Robertson?
Here.
Councilmember Stokes?
Here.
And Councilmember Zahn?
Here.
Thank you.
Well, this week marks the anniversary of a very sad and complex time in our nation's and our city's history. It was on February 19th, 1942, that then President Roosevelt signed an executive order allowing for the forced internment of Japanese Americans. Many in our Bellevue Japanese American community remember their experiences during this time, and we honor them and mark this date as the Day of Remembrance. Japanese incarceration during World War II significantly impacted Bellevue and other communities. And in recognition of this event, we have the opportunity to educate ourselves and others on the fragility of civil liberties in time of crises. So I would like to take a minute to have all the council members read a proclamation, starting with Councilmember Lee.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Whereas February 19th marks the anniversary of President Franklin Delano Roosevelt signing Executive Order 9066 in 1942, which authorized the United States government to create military exclusion areas, frequently referred to as internment camps for Japanese Americans living on the West Coast. And
whereas more than 110,000 Japanese Americans, including American citizens and those born in the country, were forcibly relocated from their homes to camps in remote inland parts of the continent. And
whereas among those incarcerated were 300 women, men, and children of Japanese ancestry who called Bellevue home. And
whereas the well-documented cost was heavy, both emotionally and financially, with many Japanese Americans losing their homes, businesses, savings, and property. And
whereas Bellevue lost a generation of Japanese American residents when only 11 of the 60 families returned to the area after 1945. And
the United States government formally apologized for the internment policy in 1988 when President Ronald Reagan signed the Civil Liberties Act, offering survivors a $20,000 in compensation. And
whereas the city of Bellevue recognizes the value of its diverse residents, workers, and visitors, and is committed to inclusion, access, equality, and opportunity for all. Now, therefore, I, Lynn Robinson, Mayor of the City of Bellevue, Washington, and on behalf of our council, do hereby proclaim the week of February 14th through the 21st as a week of action and remembrance, and urge the residents of Bellevue to reflect on this unfortunate time in our nation's history. The city further reaffirms its commitment to protecting the civil rights of everyone in our community. Thank you, everybody. Okay, Councilmember Robertson. Could you do the flag salute, please?
Certainly. Will everyone please join me in the flag salute? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic
for which it stands,
one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty
and justice for all.
Okay, on to the approval of the agenda.
I move to approve the agenda, amended to add an update on the city's snow response under the city manager's report.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Next we have oral communication. City Clerk, do we have anybody signed up to speak tonight?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Tonight there are 2 speakers under oral communications. And with that, I will call the first speaker, who is Randy Banneker. Mr. Banneker, can you hear me?
I can.
Great, your time begins now.
Thank you. Madam Mayor and members of the council, this is Randy Banneker representing the Seattle King County Realtors. I wanted to chat with you again tonight and thank you for your work on the accessory dwelling unit and unit lot subdivision code amendments, and encourage your passage of those pieces of legislation tonight. These two code amendments represent important housing affordability strategies and expanded home ownership opportunities consistent with the city's affordable housing strategy. ADUs are a great tool to inject some affordability into the city while contributing to neighborhood quality and stability through the flexibility these units offer homeowners. ADUs can serve as an income stream to help with the mortgage or other expenses. They can allow homeowners on fixed incomes to age in place by renting the ADU or moving into the ADU and renting the primary residence. Some families use ADUs for intergenerational living, which can be a tremendous help for caring for aging parents or enabling grandparents to take care of grandchildren. The unit lot subdivisions offer a fee simple alternative to condominium ownership. This is important because condominium construction liability, while easing through amendments to the State Condominium Act, remains a costly barrier to new condo construction. As a result, condos affordable to middle income earners aren't being built in the numbers that we'd like to see them. Unit lot subdivisions offer a viable alternative. Thanks for your time tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Banneker. The next speaker this evening is Ruth Lipscombe. Ms. Lipscombe, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Thank you. Your time begins now.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor Robinson, Deputy Mayor, and council members. My name is Ruth Lipscombe, and I live in the Newport Shores neighborhood of Bellevue. Tonight, I hope you'll be voting to make it slightly easier to include an accessory dwelling unit in newly constructed homes. I strongly endorse this ordinance, and I hope you'll support it. Next month will mark 3 years since my husband and I moved into our newly built forever home. When we designed it, we envisioned that his dream garage workshop could someday be converted into a small apartment for guests, family members, a long-term tenant, or perhaps a caretaker for us as we age. He's still using that shop space, but it's nice to know it has a future use. Accessory dwelling units are a type of housing that's sorely lacking in Bellevue. Some have called it the missing middle. It's the housing that's affordable for those who make too much to qualify for publicly subsidized housing, but can't afford to rent in the gleaming new towers we see downtown, much less buy in our expensive real estate market. But this is also the housing for those who like the calmer, older, leafier neighborhoods. This is the infill housing for young people starting out in their careers, for small families, for our underpaid teachers and healthcare workers, our boomerang millennials, and for homeowners who are helping to supplement their income so they can age in place. Thank you again for helping to create the missing middle housing in Bellevue.
Great, thank you, Ms. Lipscombe. At this time, I would ask if there is anyone else connected to this call who would like to make oral communication to the council. If so, please use the raise hand function or *9 if you're connected with a phone. And Mayor, I do not see any additional raised hands.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Miyake.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Mayor Robinson and council members. I have 2 items to report under the city manager's report this evening. And the first one is a quick overview of the city's wraparound services program, which is housed in the Parks and Community Services Department. And it's about how the program has adapted to meet the needs of our most vulnerable students and families during the pandemic. Joining us this evening is Michael Shiosaki, the director of our Parks and Community Services Department, just to provide you an overview of the wraparound services program and our response during the pandemic. Michael?
Good evening, Mayor Robinson, Deputy Mayor Neuenhaus, council members, and City Manager Miyake. I'm excited to join you this evening to share the good news about the wraparound services program. So next slide, please. To provide a bit of background, the city's wraparound services program was launched in 2005. The formation of this program was a collaborative effort between the City of Bellevue, the Bellevue School District, and United Way, with the goal to preserve and enhance neighborhood vitality by infusing needed services into local schools. Through this innovative program, the City of Bellevue places city staff within Bellevue School District schools, and these staff identify the needs within each specific community that they serve, and then work to find solutions in a variety of ways, including identifying families who are facing challenges, building relationships with them, and then providing them with the resource referrals and direct support. Also, partnering with providers to bring services into the school to make them more accessible to families, such as flu shots, holiday food baskets, clothing resources, and community meetings with city officials. And supporting families to learn about education and government systems and ensuring they have the information they need for their children to be successful. Next slide, please. Thank you. So today, the City of Bellevue has 2 wraparound coordinators who serve the communities of Stevenson and Lake Hills Elementaries and Odell and Highland Middle Schools. As you can see, these are some of the most diverse schools in Bellevue. These statistics make these schools high needs and qualify for Title I designation, indicating that their families would likely benefit from access to added resources. Our coordinators are providing vital support and coordination so that families can access these resources. Next slide, thank you. The work of the wraparound program focuses on children, families, neighborhoods, and community. A few of the outcomes of work done by the city's wraparound coordinators includes increased school readiness, a sense of belonging and ownership among children. Families are more involved in their children's education. Families feel welcome at their child's school, and they have increased access to services. Using a strengths-based approach, our wraparound program addresses social issues, recreation, health, academic needs, family services, and community needs. A few practical examples of this work have included connecting children and families to mental health services, creating partnerships that provide children with school activities, including sports, fine arts, robotics, and cultural celebrations. Also hosting community fairs for families to access immunizations, information from city leaders, attend legal clinics, and learn about community service providers. Also providing support to families, thus ensuring access to housing, food, and clothing. And lastly, collaborating with community partners to provide children with access to tutoring, mentoring programs, and early screening for learning disabilities. Because of the city's longstanding investment in this program, when COVID-19 struck, we were able to pivot quickly. The work of our wraparound coordinators in the community has led to established relationships with the school district, community resource providers, families, and children. Our coordinators have been directly serving families since the pandemic began, providing support such as connecting families to accurate information about the virus in accessible formats in their primary language. Also assisting families to find childcare options so that children can be safe and adults can work. Also supporting the food pantry at Stevenson and Lake Hills Elementaries, serving 600 people each week. The added assistance of our wraparound coordinators helped ensure that the food pantries stayed open during winter break so that families maintained vital access to food, hygiene, and cleaning products. Also delivering food to school district households who have tested positive for COVID-19. Other support includes continuing to serve as a vital bridge between city departments and diverse vulnerable families in our community. And when the City Council awarded the school district $75,000 in community development block grant funds for childcare scholarships and $127,000 in COVID-related CARES Act dollars for food assistance, our coordinators played a critical role in helping with the implementation of these programs, ensuring that food and hygiene supplies were purchased that responded to the needs of students and families, and these items were distributed in a safe and efficient way. And a shout out to our staff, Jeannie Anderson and Cecilia Martinez Vasquez, for their hard work and dedication. The hardship of the pandemic will leave a lasting impact, which will result in many families experiencing an increased need for human services. For some families, this is a complex and truly unfamiliar process to navigate. As our schools gradually reopen and some adults are able to return to work, the support and collaboration of our wraparound services program will remain critical. Our wraparound services program will help children and families make connections with local, county, and state resources and referrals, including childcare, out of school time services, mental health services, housing resources, and food. In addition, our coordinators will continue to advocate and leverage resources in the community. While the coming months and years may hold uncertainty for vulnerable students and families, our wraparound program will be a stable and reliable source of support. So prior to the pandemic, the city saw the need for children and families to have support in accessing resources to improve their child's education and their family's stability and enrichment. And the city invested in the wraparound services program to further these goals. As community needs have grown throughout the time of the pandemic, our wraparound coordinators have been situated to connect the city, the school district, and community resources to our children and families most in need. And as we look to the future, the wraparound services program will provide the support students and families need to adjust to a post-pandemic world. Thank you for your continuing investment in this important program.
Thank you for that presentation. You know, I remember Councilmember Stokes being a huge supporter and proponent of this right in the beginning, and I wanted to give him an opportunity to speak as well. Thank you, Mr. Shiosaki.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I'm very, very glad and proud to do this. The wraparound program was the was the thing that really brought together the school district and the city got getting involved. And Patrick Foran was, as at that time, the Parks director, was very involved in that. And I got involved with through the Bellevue Schools Foundation. We were involved with this, and as well as with the Bellevue Council PTSA, and particularly the 4 schools that are involved in this were the ones that we started really working on. And when we formed this Bridging the Achievement Gap committee to help those schools who didn't get the big support from the PTAs and others and needed it. And we worked with the wraparound group as well. And then, frankly, it was one of the things that really led to the formation of Eastside Pathways. So it's all been an interwoven thing, and it's a very great partnership that has continued and grown, and is something that Bellevue as a city can be very, very proud of, and the school district as well. So thanks for letting me talk about this, because it's something that's very dear to my heart, and I'm glad to see it going and doing so well.
Okay,
and
thank you.
Michael.
It's a great program. Thank you very much. And then I asked Mr. Miyake to provide us a report on the snow plowing, because this is the first snow incident I've had since I've been a council member where I didn't get one single complaint from the residents about snow. And then I read about this amazing concoction that they used. And so I thought we should all hear more about it. So Mr. Miyake.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. As many of you know, we got some snow this weekend. Many of you got over 12 inches of snow. And so joining us this evening is Mark Poe, as well as Brian Breeden from our transportation departments, to provide that, the city's report on our response to this most recent snow event this weekend. So Mark.
Thanks, Mr. Miyake. Good evening, Mayor Robinson, Deputy Mayor Neuenhouse, and members of the council. I'm going to share my screen now, and we have a few PowerPoint slides for you. Can you see my screen?
Not yet.
There we go. Yeah, put this. Okay, so let's start with just a summary of the event. We went into around-the-clock staffing.
Mark, we don't see your screen yet. Are you sharing it right this moment?
Let's take a look here. Okay, let's try that one more time.
There you go.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you. And let's go into that. Can you still see it?
Yes.
Okay, great. So like I mentioned, we went into around the clock staffing back on Thursday, the 11th at 11 a.m. We did receive a high volume of snow, as the city manager mentioned, over a foot in places. With that impactful snow really started Friday night, kind of went into Saturday morning. We expected a break on Saturday. We didn't get it. Kept snowing Saturday and then well into Sunday. Very dry snow, and then the snow through Sunday into Monday was more wet and did compact even more. So in high snow volume events like this, it's really good to have prioritization because we can't get everywhere at once. And so with this snowfall, we stayed on the primary arterials and then those primary neighborhood routes into Sunday. Sunday, we started to get to some of the secondary routes. And then on Monday, we started concentrating on all other roads in Bellevue. Just as a reminder, we continue our response efforts until every one of our 1,100 lane miles in Bellevue has been serviced and is deemed to be in a passable, acceptable condition. Just some quick statistics. We placed over 13,000 gallons of liquid de-icer, and as the mayor mentioned, we have a little more on that story coming up. 600 tons of solid de-icer product. We affectionately call it the ice slicer. And also on this event, noteworthy, we did not place any traction sand. And this, our de-icer products were sufficient with our plows to go ahead and service this event. That has some real advantages from an environmental standpoint. We don't have to pick it up after the event is over. It doesn't get, when it dries out, it doesn't become an airborne pollutant and those sorts of things, stays out of our streams. So very happy about that as well. Just want to give you a glimpse into what a typical shift looks like. So we've been on around the clock shifts, 2 12-hour shifts, and that involves about 25 staff, plow operators, dispatchers, field coordinators, a vegetation crew. Of course, we have the mechanics helping us. We have scouts looking for down trees and wires on the road so that the plow operators don't have to deal with that. And importantly, we also have a picture taker. And you might wonder, well, why do you have a picture taker? But that is key for us because it allows us to keep our public information officers up to date with current pictures and the status of the event so they can make that connection between us and our community. And that's an important connection, as you know, keep everybody up to date and send out those reminder messages. And then finally, this is truly an interdepartmental event. We lead it as a transportation department. There's no way we could pull it off without the help of utilities, parks, FAM, everybody pitches in to help. Also want to talk about something new, and this is straight out of our Smart Mobility Plan, and it's AVL, or what we call Automatic Vehicle Locating. This is the very first event we were able to test our new AVL technology. And although we still have some bugs to work out and some features to add, we are already seeing some significant benefits. Because the vehicle tracking, the plow tracking is automated, we can dispatch those vehicles sooner. We can better track which routes they're on and which ones have been serviced and when they were serviced. And because we know where all the vehicles are, we can dispatch the closest plow to a call from fire or police or a critical citizen call that commonly come in during the events. We can dispatch that closest vehicle to deal with that. So I'm gonna leave you with kind of a cool story that came out of this. It's from the Maidenbower area. There's some confusing streets around there. Fire called us to assist with a medic unit that could not get to their call without the help of a plow. So with AVL, we quickly identified where the closest plow was. It was a new plow operator, new to the city of Bellevue, and we noticed when they started responding to the medic unit they took a wrong turn. And we could actually see that now in real time. We immediately got on the radio, hey, get that thing turned around. You need to go this way. We talked them into the medic unit, got the medic unit unstuck and up to the call. So again, just seeing immediate benefits from this, and more to come, but we'll keep you up to date with this technology and any other new technologies we employ with events like this. And now to the de-icer. So our de-icer is calcium chloride, liquid and in solid form. It's a salt that raises the freezing point of a liquid, snow or water that wants to turn into ice. It also helps prevent a bond between snow and the roadway. So it's easier to get the snow off the road. Now, to increase the effectiveness of the liquid de-icer, the supplier supplies a product called Boost. And originally the Boost was beet juice. And now they've kind of transitioned that over to molasses. And there's two benefits to this. First of all, molasses is very sticky. So when we spray the de-icer on the road and then come back and put solid de-icer or the ice slicer on top, those little chips tend to stay to the road longer because it's stickier. And so we get better productivity out of the product and it lasts longer. And then also it adds some color, and the color is important because it helps us identify where we've sprayed and how much of that spray is left. So two benefits to the molasses Boost product, and now you know the story behind the molasses. So just to summarize, this now is the third year in a row that we've had a major snow event. Another very successful interdepartmental response. I want to congratulate Brian, who's on the call, and his crews for another great job. Huge thank you to our residents and our businesses for all their help staying off the roads when they could, and just all their support in general. And then lastly, of course, just a huge thank you to our crews and all the people that have been working around the clock for the last 6 days. Putting their lives on hold to make sure other lives are of higher quality, and very much appreciated. So I'm happy to announce we went off event response today at 12:30, and we have stood down, and the event is over, hopefully for the last event of the year when it comes to snow. We'll see, but we'll be ready either way. With that, I think we might have time for any questions that you might have.
Actually, we have such a full meeting tonight. I think we'll bypass that, but I want to thank you very much for this presentation and for the excellent response. Really appreciated.
Our pleasure. Thank you.
Okay, we are on consent calendar. Do I have a motion to approve?
I move to approve the consent calendar.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Great. Okay, we're doing a public hearing next. Mr. Miyake, would you like to introduce this?
Sure, thank you. Good evening, Mayor Robinson and council members. The purpose of tonight's public hearing is to solicit input on the release of multiple easements on parcels owned by Sound Transit for its operation and maintenance facility. These easements are being released as part of Sound Transit's redevelopment of the site. This was last in front of you back in January of this year, of 2020 actually, on consent where the easements were declared surplus and where the date for tonight's public hearing was set. Following the public hearing, council will be asked to take action on the proposed resolution to release the easements. Joining us this evening is Ira McDaniel, our real property manager from Finance and Asset Management Department. With that, I'm going to turn over to Ira.
Thank you, Mr. Miyake. And good evening, Mayor and council members. Our staff report tonight is regarding a request to release 8 utility easements, and these easements lie within Sound Transit's OMFE, which is an assemblage of 9 parcels that they own. Here's a map showing the location of their property. This is on the west side of 120th Avenue Northeast, generally between Northeast Spring Boulevard and North Up Way. Just east of the East Side Rail Corridor. And as always, tonight's public hearing is an opportunity for the public to comment on the request to release these easements. So as a part of their redevelopment of the site into the OMFE, Sound Transit has removed all of the previously existing utilities, all of the city-owned utilities within their property. And they've requested that the city release our utility easements within the site, which includes 2 sewer easements, the entirety of 4 water easements, as well as 2 additional portions of 2 additional water easements. Due to the size and the shape of the site, I've split it up onto 2 slides. So you're looking at the north end of the property, and on the next slide here is the southern portion of the site. So Sound Transit did construct new utilities to serve their property, and most of those new facilities are owned and maintained by Sound Transit, not the city. There are, however, 4 small locations where there are water facilities that the city will own. These are all located just along 120th Avenue Northeast, where the public water enters onto private property to connect to water meters. So Sound Transit will be granting us a new easement for these 4 easement areas. That new easement will be signed by Sound Transit prior to the city executing the release documents and recording those. So that's it for the public hearing. And after the public hearing, we'll request, sorry, that's it for the staff presentation. After the public hearing, we'll request council's action on the resolution, and we will be available for any questions after the public hearing.
Terrific. Thank you. Are there any, well, let's go ahead and open the public hearing, and then if we have any questions after we're done, if there's comments from the public, we will take those. So this is 6 full and 2 partial, all in one resolution that we are looking to possibly adopt tonight. So is there a motion to open the public hearing?
I move to open the public hearing.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Are there, clerk, are there any comments or public comments?
Thank you. There are no pre-registered speakers for the public hearing this evening. So at this time, I would ask if there is anyone connected to this call who would like to make a comment at the public hearing. Please raise your hand with the raise hand function, or *9 if you're connected with a phone. And Mayor, there are no hands raised.
Okay, is there a motion to close the public hearing?
I move to close the public hearing.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so I'm going to make it so I can see everybody. Hold on. There we go. Does anybody have any questions or comments on this? Okay, I don't see any. So is there a motion to adopt the resolution?
I move to adopt resolution 9898, authorizing the execution of documents necessary to release the 6 utility easements and portions of 2 additional utility easements which have been declared surplus to the city's needs and are no longer required for providing continued public utility service.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, that passes. Thank you. So we're on to some to a study session item. Mr. Bianchi, would you like to introduce this?
Sure. Good evening, Mayor Robinson, council members. On your study session this evening is a discussion of funding allocations being recommended by the Arts Executive Board, which is a regional housing coalition, for the fall round of applications. Just by way of background, the Arts Executive Board annually reviews and recommends funding applications for affordable housing projects. Bellevue is a member city of Arts and contributes to the projects recommended for funding along with other cities. Tonight, staff are seeking direction to prepare legislation improving the Arts, recommending funding request for action at a future meeting. Joining us this evening is Emil King, the Assistant Director in Community Development, as well as joining him is Lindsay Masters, Executive Manager, as well as Klaus from a Senior Planner for a Regional Coalition for Housing, also known as Arts. With that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Emil. Emil?
Thank you, City Manager Miyake. Lindsay, if you'd like to start the PowerPoint, please. Thanks, Lindsay. Good evening, Mayor Robinson, Deputy Mayor Neuenhouse, and members of council. I'd like to offer a few opening comments on behalf of the Community Development Department this evening. The City of Bellevue has a strong partnership with ARCH that dates back over 25 years. As you'll hear tonight, the Housing Trust Fund has been able to contribute to a range of projects over the years across the East Side. The city's continuing support for the ARCH Trust Fund is consistent with Bellevue's affordable housing strategy adopted by Council in 2017. Bellevue's strategy has the overarching goal to create more affordable housing. The annual ARCH funding rounds will further action in Bellevue's plan relating specifically to developing affordable housing near transit hubs, pursuing partnerships that are key to most all affordable housing projects, and opportunities for preservation projects when they arise. I'd now like to hand things over to Lindsay and Klaus from ARCH.
Great, good evening, and thank you for having us. Our main agenda tonight is to deliver a set of funding recommendations for you, but in advance of that, we'd also like to take some time to just give you a brief background on the Housing Trust Fund program and looking back at some of the past accomplishments. An overview of the request we're bringing forward tonight is a total request for funding of $621,900 that would be allocated to 3 different projects, which we'll go over, located in Bellevue, Bothell, and Kirkland. Combined, these projects would create 467 units of long-term, deeply affordable
Lindsay,
housing.
Excuse me, I'm going to interrupt you for one moment. I don't know if it's just me, but it's coming over kind of broken up. And I wonder if you might want to turn off your video to see if we can hear it better.
Sure, I'll give that a try.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, just pipe up if you continue to have that issue.
That's better.
So there will be a combined total of 467 units of long-term affordable housing within these projects at a cost of a little over $10,000 per unit in ARCH funds. And those funds comprise about 3% of the total project costs. So we're leveraging a significant amount of other funding. Bellevue's portion of the ARCH funds that are being pooled into these projects is a little over 12% of all the total funds. And we have a slide, hold on just a minute. Here showing that detailed breakdown of city contributions across the 3 recommended set of projects. So moving on to some brief background about the Housing Trust Fund program. This program has been in existence pretty much since the beginning of ARCH over 30 years ago. In that time, it has accomplished a lot. It has accommodated a wide array of projects and local priorities, served a diverse set of populations, including some of the projects you featured here. It has been driven over the years by a set of investment principles. These are sort of the long-term strategic principles that drive the investments and things that we are striving to accomplish each year. One of those, as we've discussed in the past, is geographic distribution. So trying to make sure that as an East Side region, we are providing housing choice across the East Side, not just in any one neighborhood or in any city. We have a citizen advisory board that helps us achieve a community shaping of the projects before they are delivered to you to be recommended for funding. We are looking at the long-term sustainability of these investments. So we look at them as long-term community assets as we're evaluating their performance over time. And we also try to promote competition. So creating a significantly wider pool of projects to compete for these resources than we could if we were doing this just in one city. In that time, the Housing Trust Fund has accomplished a lot. It has created more affordable housing than any other program on the East Side, getting close to 4,500 units of housing, including some number of shelter beds as well. Those have been well distributed. I think we've done a good job of accomplishing that goal of geographic distribution. And important to remember, the Housing Trust Fund is one in a set of tools to create affordability. And so we also rely heavily on land use and incentive programs to create even further housing choice and diversity. So you see both of those mapped here in the green and orange dots. I appreciated the comments at the beginning of the meeting talking about racial equity. That's something that we value deeply, and we see affordable housing as a key strategy for helping cities to become inclusive and welcoming. And important to that for us is taking the time to look at who is accessing all this housing that we've created. So I'm sharing a few slides here that show some of the demographic information that is reported to us on an annual basis. The Housing Trust Fund, as you can see here, has created housing for people with extremely low incomes. A significant majority of people are earning under 30% of the median income. You can see a chart to the right, which shows you what those household incomes look like. Another slice of information that we pulled out of the data, there is well over 400 households who have come into permanent housing in the trust fund from homelessness, both families and individuals. So it's been a successful tool in creating housing stability for that population. And we've also have seen a significant number of single parent households as well. This slide shows the racial and ethnic demographics of that same population. We see a significant share of different communities of color within these households. And then we've shown kind of a comparison to the broader renter population in Eastgate County. So you can kind of see what this housing access means for the broader community. From there, I'm going to hand it over to Klaus to walk you through the actual projects that we are recommending for funding tonight. So Klaus, if you can unmute yourself, I will put myself on mute here.
All right, good evening. So we're recommending funding for 3 projects. The first of which is located in the Eastgate area of Bellevue. It is a joint partnership between Plymouth Housing, which is making an entree to the east side, and Horizon Housing, which you helped fund in the past year with the project that they are doing at the Together Center. So the request for this project is $500,000, and the Citizen Advisory Board made the recommendation to the Executive Board for $500,000 towards this project. It will bring 95 units to the Eastgate project. This is the final piece to make that whole campus a reality. It is permanent supportive housing, and the population that will be served in these studio units are homeless single adults. Generally, we are setting it up to transition from the Congregations for the Homeless shelter, as well as the Sophia Way shelter. And the location obviously is at 13520 Southeast Eastgate Way in Bellevue. The next project, Lindsay, could you move the slide? So this is—
I'm going to go backwards just for a minute here.
Okay.
And my slides have a little delay, so sorry for the halting slides. There we go.
So this—
oh, sorry.
Are you going to talk or am I?
I am going to talk as soon as I tell my computer not to restart at the moment. Hold on. There we go. So we just wanted to take a moment to tell you a little bit about permanent supportive housing. We know some of you are well familiar with this, but because this is a housing model that Arch has not funded in the past, we thought it was worth mentioning some of the important features of this housing type. Permanent supportive housing is long-term or non-time limited housing. The goal is to create housing stability for the individuals. And the key feature is that it is really housing that's paired with intensive wraparound services that match the needs of the population. Just typical building features that come along with permanent supportive housing. There is frequently 24-hour staffing at the front desk to create a secured entry in and out. There is ample space for community building, community space, as well as dedicated private office space for social services that are delivered on site. There is an ample research base that has studied this housing model over time and that has demonstrated it is successful in creating long-term housing retention for the population, improved health outcomes for the population, and reduction in cost of serving the population, both in comparison with emergency room visits, as well as other emergency systems. So we're happy to follow up with more information about this in the future if there's additional questions. And now I'll turn it back to you. Thanks, Klaus.
So this is a map of the campus. On the lower shelf is, of course, the Polaris project, which is 350 units of family housing, predominantly workforce housing. And on the upper shelf, sharing that piece of real estate with the Congregations for the Homeless 100-bed shelter is this phase 3 Plymouth housing project, 95 units, 93 units for clients and the balance for their supportive staff. So this is the final piece that allows the acquisition from the city, from the King County. And next slide. So the next project you saw last year, the recommendation last year was to take joint cities, CDBG contributions, and fund the acquisition of the site for this SAMA senior project in Bellevue, in Bothell. It is on the redeveloped area of Bothell, near the Bothell Landing. And they're looking for an additional $500,000 to realize a larger project that you saw than last year. It's now 76 studio units for seniors, and they are targeting 50% of area median income. And the project also benefited from an award from the Department of Commerce to pursue ultra high efficiency energy design. So that will be on Bothell Way at about 180th. And the next slide. So this is a project that is modeled after the Together Center redevelopment. This is called Horizon Housing Polaris at Totem Lake. The partnership between Inland and Horizon Housing is asking for $4 million. And the executive board recommends that councils accept a recommendation for up to $4 million for this project. It will create 467 units. 80 units will be at 30% AMI and 50% AMI. 219 units at 60% AMI, or essentially workforce or a little below, and 168 units that are capped at 100% AMI. The reason for this mix is to achieve an ability to get conventional financing for this project. They are talking with HopeLink to provide the services to the lower income units, and they envision that a good percentage of those lower income units will serve households transitioning out of homelessness. So this is on the south side of 124th in Kirkland. There is also an additional $8 million committed by Microsoft. And that is the fund that Arch is ministering for Microsoft through the city of Bellevue. So I believe that is it for my slides, other than to show what these requests are. So it's a $5 million request, similar to last year, $500,000 each for those first two projects, and up to $4 million for the last project. Next slide.
So here we are just summing up our request for direction to come back with legislation approving the funding request.
Great. Okay, thank you for this presentation. And I'm gonna, know everybody's gonna have comments and questions. So I'll call in this order: Councilmember Stokes, followed by Lee, Zahn, Robertson, Barksdale, Deputy Mayor Muenhouse, and myself. So Councilmember Stokes, would you like to start us off?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Yeah, this is very exciting. It's really good to see the work that's been done by Arch for so long, with all of us working together in the region and benefiting the communities. And this one seems to be, compared to others, a real step forward, and really working with our goal in our affordable housing strategy and the strategies of the cities around us. And actually, I like the fact that we're working on doing things that actually tie in with the 1590 funding as well. I mean, that concept. And we're making really advances here in terms of dealing with homelessness and the issues of affordable housing in various ways. And I think it's a big step forward, and I think we're making a great investment for this and continuing the good work that Arch has done to advance these goals for a long, long time. I'm just very excited to see it, and exciting to see this, that our complex on in Eastgate is coming along, and also seeing this work being done just in our neighborhood, because we're all people live and cross over the lines and work across the lines. So it's exciting. I'm really pleased with it and very supportive of it.
Thank you. Councilmember Lee.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Wow, Arch, what a wonderful trajectory and path you've come through over the years. I mean, this is indeed the model of regional cooperation. It started so many years ago and still true today. And I'm really impressed with your presentation as well. I mean, the technology has, giving you the opportunity to show wonderful pictures, presentations, and it's very impressive. But the key is that you're still upholding the principle and of regional project that has all the members starting out initially with Bellevue. Now we've gone up to more than a dozen cities, all on the east side. And because we know that homelessness and affordable housing knows no boundary, it's what we all have to deal with. And so this model has been working. And I'm really impressed with what you've come up with, because affordable housing has become such an important thing for the whole region. And we have to, face the issues as well as anybody else has. And you have, again, continued to be the model of working together with other cities and leveraging and our ability in providing land, money, talents, whatever each city can do. And address, at the same time, we are responding to the new challenges we're facing, homelessness and all that. And I think you're doing a great job to have this, getting to where you are. I'm very impressed. The one thing, of course, is that, we have an injection. I mean, it's gone in such a big scale with $500 million of Microsoft money. That's giving you a big jump, provide you the ability to do a lot more. But the important thing is that we, have to respond to the needs of the community, the concerns of the community, and the real solutions, of this problem. It's not just money, you don't just throw money around. And so I really like to see the projects you're talking about in Eastgate particularly, and you're providing services, that, and then we're talking about 0 to 30 AMI. That's very important. And so the key is, as we talk about, the city is now going to take 1% of our property tax. I think 60% of or 40%, whatever, but a big chunk of it will be used to address mental health and other services. That's important to make sure that the people who live in these facilities are going to be, in fact, indeed, assisted and helped to get out of the situation that got them into it in the first place. So I think it's important to emphasize that, important that, with all the wonderful things you're learning, we are all learning, that we're going to put into a facility like this in our neighborhood. We got to be sure that it's not just giving money, but building it, and then throw away the keys. No, you have to be traditionally, like Archie has always done. When you build a project in a neighborhood, you stay with it. You work with the residents, and so the model you use when you first describe it is sustainable. It's a partnership. It's people, cross government. It's not just you do it, give money, somebody else take care of it. No, all the community cities are involved in addressing all the continuing problem, working together. To me, that's truly partnership, cooperation, collaboration, and that can be sustained. So I like what you're saying, but my only concern caveat is the two projects you're describing in the Eastgate particularly, working with Congregation of Homeless, that's great output, great partners we're working with. These are relatively still things that we haven't had that much experience with. So we need to be really careful, really thoughtful, and really working with the community, making sure our money is going to the right places and doing the right things so that we can truly help the people there and be able to sustain that 20 years later, we can say, very great. We still can continue to do it instead of saying, well, we made a mistake, what we're going to do. So I really like what you have said, appreciate it. And I want to encourage you to keep the same principle and that you can work with. The people in Archtown has changed, and don't know a lot of you anymore, but the principle is the same. And your product and what you have done seems to me are still very consistent. So I'm very hopeful with the city support, with the citizens support, understanding this will work out.
Thank you. Councilmember Zahn.
Yes, thank you, Lindsay and Klaus. Very great plan that you presented to us. To me, it's a very thoughtful regional approach that's getting us results. So what I heard was $10,700 per unit. That's amazing to be able to get the 467 units. And it also includes, right, a plethora of housing, right? Supportive housing for people exiting homelessness, senior housing, as well as workforce housing. So to me, it's a good plan because we're not focusing on only just one area. We're really looking at a broad-based opportunities. So I really appreciate that work. The focus on racial equity as you look at this work, I think is also very important, as we saw in the wraparound services and the families that are here on free and reduced lunch that are struggling. So those things are important. Having housing choices, the ultra high energy efficiency and being able to actually build these units where we're not just looking at first costs, but really the cost of someone living there and their energy bills being as low as possible, I think is amazing. Being able to leverage the Microsoft funds so that it isn't just our money. And I agree with Councilmember Stokes that as we look at our 1590 money, how do we really look at maximizing the revenue that we're going to collect to build with urgency? Because I think that even with these 467 units, many more units are needed in our broader East Side communities to support those that are in need. And with that said, I do have a couple of comments. One is, as I think about the coordinated entry for all system at the Eastgate site, how we really do work on in partnership on the preference for folks exiting homelessness from CFH and Sophia Way, because coordinated entry, I think, is quite challenging in that regard sometimes. So I'd like to really keep track of that and understand where that's going. The other one is the Eastgate information in our packet is slightly different than the presentation. So perhaps a follow-up on, are those 90 some units all 0 to 30%, or were they 0 to 30 and 30 to 60%? So there's a discrepancy between the presentation materials and the packet materials. I'd like to better understand that. And then lastly, the senior apartments talks about Imagine Housing. And we have gotten a few emails about some concerns in terms of the property manager that Imagine Housing's used for some of their units. So I'd like to get a follow-up on how we make sure that as we build these units, that the way that they're managed really maintains the upkeep for the folks that are renting those units. So those were my, you can respond now or just follow up with me later. Thank you.
Lindsay, why don't you answer everybody's questions at the end, maybe? You do yeah, I think that would be great. So thank you, council members. On Councilmember Robertson.
Thank you. Love Arch. Love all the history of work that Arch has done with so many cities on the east side. I'm going to start with the easiest first. I'm going to go in reverse order. The Totem Lake project I love that project. It's got a mixed income. It's what a great project. It's in a great redeveloping mixed use area. That is, I think, a model for how a project should be. I think the mixed income is really critical in having projects be successful. So 2 thumbs way up. On the Samama Senior Apartments, I like the project, but normally when we have projects in our own borders, the city that has it in its borders pays more. So I'm wondering why Bothell's contribution is relatively small on that project. Maybe they gave a bunch on the earlier funding round. We're going to ask that. We're doing answers at the end. So I'm curious about that. But otherwise, I'm supportive of the project. The project that gives me the most concern is the Eastgate Supportive Housing Project. And the reason it gives me the most concern, well, and I guess I have a question is, are the 93 units all low barrier, or is only a portion of the 93 units all low barrier? And the reason that this causes me a lot of concern, I'd like that question answered, but is that I know that this is part of a bigger campus and it's part of a bigger neighborhood. And when you have the low barrier, non-sober living with the people that are the hardest to house, yes, they need housing. That's a lot of units if they're all for that level of entry. And it's going to make it really hard for the people who are at the Congregations for the Homeless shelter to maintain their trajectory towards, accountability and getting out of homelessness, if on their same property there's a whole, supportive housing unit where the people can be using drugs, can be, absolutely using substances and having no path towards, yes, they're housed, but they don't necessarily help the whole structure of the campus. If the people can go from the shelter next door to do the things that do not help them on their pathway out of homelessness and to self-sufficiency. So I'm very concerned about that. I'm also very concerned about the impact that type of use would have on the workforce housing next door, as well as on the daycare on the other side. So we've seen that those types of facilities tend to have impacts, and the impacts are ones that obviously we need to deal with, but they are not impacts that are always very pleasant. So I'm very concerned about that. Is it going to make it difficult for the families living next door, or the families and the young kids at the daycare on the other side, to feel safe, to have a clean environment? I don't know, but we need to know that. So I'd like to see some strings attached to this, and I'd like to see it be a mix of different levels of, sober living as well as some of the low barrier, because I think it will create greater stability to help people get up on the towards self-sufficiency. I would also note that although this operator has an excellent track record of a lot of this type of housing, this operator had a murder of their social worker at the Seattle similar type of supportive housing last year. So, that causes big concerns to me. I'd like to see this addressed, because if we're going to be funding this, it needs to be a good neighbor to Bellevue. So how are we going to assure that it is, if it's going to be low barrier, 93 units, not sober living? And how are we going to make sure that we address the impacts on the campus and outside the campus? So, yeah, I'm very concerned about this project. So, but otherwise, Totem Lake project, love it. Sama Senior Apartments, love it. Would like to know why Bothell has such a small contribution. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Robertson. Councilmember Barksdale.
All right, thank you, Mayor. And thanks to Arch and staff for all the work that you do to provide affordable housing in our community and our region. And just want to say that I support the work that you're doing and really appreciate the mix of levels of AMI as well as the different populations that you're serving. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, a lot of great comments so far, and appreciate the discussion. I echo Councilmember Stokes. I think that these are some exciting projects, especially the Totem Lake and the Sama project. I think just great projects and great models, and I believe they'll both be very successful. However, I do share Councilmember Robertson's concern about what we're seeing in Eastgate. There are some potential pitfalls there, so it'd be great to get. I won't repeat the same questions, but would like to know those answers around that and make sure there is a good neighbor, almost a good neighbor agreement in place. And actually, that leads to one of my first questions. Like, with CFH, we have what I consider a very good process in place for public outreach, getting residents involved. We have a good neighbor agreement. We're going to be shortly placing people on that G&A committee. But I'm not sure if those same kind of outreach processes are in place for these other two projects here. And if there's not, can we get something like that in place? Because quite frankly, I'm not sure how much of our residents and businesses in that area are familiar with these two projects. I know they thanks to the great work by staff and great work by CFH, I think they're very familiar with that project. But these other two, I'm not sure that residents in that area are really up to speed on that. And I'm sure they would like to voice their concerns and be part of this process as well. Again, I think if we're able to follow the great work that CFH has been doing, I think that would be a great model for these other two projects as well. So I will leave it at that. But thank you so much for the presentation. And Lindsay, Klaus, it's great to see you again. And again, some great projects here. But share the concern about Eastgate.
Thank you. So I really liked what Councilmember Lee said when he said this was a regional collaboration for housing. That's good, because it really is. And it's such a variety of housing that you're working on in a variety of ways, serving a variety of clients or residents. And I'm so impressed, because it would have to be something like Arch to pull this off. So good job. I'm excited to have the supportive housing in our city, because I know that more than half of our homeless men and women can afford $300 a month, and they would be independent. And so to be able to provide housing for this population to get them out of homelessness is something I'm very interested in doing. So my question is, are we actually going to be serving our homeless population? So that's a little question on coordinated entry. So I know you have a lot of answers to give us, and we will sit back and listen to you.
Great, and I did my best to take notes. So I'll just go one by one, and if I've missed something at the end, feel free to let me know. And Klaus, welcome you to join me if I didn't cover something adequately.
Again, Lindsay, I love seeing you, but I think you might want to turn your video off so we can hear you better.
All right, I'll give that a try.
Thank you.
there's a storm around here, so that might be doing something to interfere. So I had a question noted about I'll start out with some of the easier ones, the contribution from the city of Bothell. The cash contribution, I think, is proportionate to what they've been able to put into the trust fund over the years. But in addition to that, they have also contributed the property. They provided the property at a discount. So they've also gone out of their way to make zoning changes to accommodate the project. So they really have stepped up their support here. I noted there was a question about Imagine Housing and some comments from members of the community about concerns around property management. We also received that letter and kind of took some immediate actions to consider some of the concerns raised and develop a couple of special funding conditions that are a part of the recommendation that you would be considering. We are long-time partners with Imagine Housing, have a close working relationship. There has been recent changes in the leadership of the organization, and so we are getting to know this new leadership and working closely with them. The conditions we've spelled out require that there be resolution of any of the verified complaints before we would contract for this additional funding. And I'm happy to go into more detail if that's desired. The other comments I have noted, I think, are primarily around the Eastgate supportive housing development. And I think we recognize that being the first of its kind on the east side, there's going to be a lot more questions and concerns and scrutiny about how the development unfolds. I was very pleased that Plymouth Housing was selected as the partner. I think they have a long track record of working with neighborhoods, working with communities to make sure that their developments are incorporated and are good neighbors. They have many past examples of doing good neighbor agreements with the surrounding area. I think they also know that Congregations for the Homeless has been very carefully stewarding the development of the shelter with that community. And as far as I know, they have been an active participant in that process, even though they're not really required to be. And I think they understand the importance of showing up as a partner in that process. So thus far, we haven't set any specific requirements about community engagement, but I think we're pretty confident that they're going to commit to that. And they had conversations with us about the decision to undertake this project being one they really thought about, and we're looking at seriously, not just as a one-time project, but as an opportunity to bring this type of housing to the east side, and that this is going to be the one that sets the model for others to come. So I think we're really encouraged by the efforts they've made so far. Coordinated entry is one of those system challenges that is part of the development of the project. There were some questions about specific features and how the project's being designed. It is still in development. It'll be at least a couple of years before the project opens. So there's a lot of time to kind of tailor the specifics of the program and how it interacts with the neighboring shelter and workforce housing complex, and to develop kind of processes for how those relationships work, as well as the physical connections between them. As I said, coordinated entry is one of those components that in the past, yes, has created challenges for instituting local preferences for how the residents are selected. It has been done through coordinated entry in the past, and we have included a set of conditions in our award that would require the sponsors to seek to institute that preference for people coming from specific shelter and away. And we know that's going to be a conversation and a negotiation, but we feel optimistic that that is a direction that we can head in. CEA is still a relatively new system. It's only been around for 5 to 7 years here locally, so it has gone through a lot of changes already, and it's continuing to evolve. And I think the people who manage the system are willing to take lessons learned and help evolve as additional homeless housing developments are created in parts of the county that we haven't had before. So it's kind of a long-winded answer about that, but I think all that to say, Arch has a strong interest in making sure that the project is developed to be of high quality, to be a good neighbor, and to create long-term positive housing outcomes for the people who are going to be living there. Did I miss any questions?
Sorry. Any more questions? You can raise your hand. I see Councilmember Robertson. Deputy Mayor, did you have your hand up? Yes. So I see those two. I see Councilmember Stokes. I see Councilmember Lee. Okay. Councilmember Robertson.
Thanks. Lindsay, how many of the units would be this low barrier?
The proposal as it was presented is that the whole project is operated using a housing first model. So they didn't anticipate creating any special set aside of units that would have higher barriers to entry.
Okay. So, and you said that Arch wants it to be high quality, good neighbor, and long-term success for the residents. It sounded like you might be putting some strings in the agreement with regard to East Side entry. I would love to see some strings in the agreement with regard to the community engagement, the commitment to mitigate the impacts, and a commitment to have a safety and security plan, and to implement it. So is that something that we could put into the agreement? If this is the first of the kind and the first one that Arch is going to fund, we need to make it really sing. We need to make it really successful. So I think having certain strings in the agreement will certainly be part of my willingness to support this, but also what is really important to the success of this so that Arch can do more, because this type of product is really important, but it has to be done really well.
Mm-hmm.
So could you address the strings in the agreement, please?
Sure. So I believe the only one that was developed as a funding condition, and just for a reminder, these are conditions that are sort of developed through the evaluation process by our Citizen Advisory Board. They form these recommendations before they get to our executive board, which then advances them on to you. And I believe the only one specific to kind of the design of the program was that there be a pursuit of preference for men and women coming out of the CFH and Sophia Way shelters. So no additional specific conditions around the features of the program.
Is it time?
Excuse me. Let me ask you a question here. City Manager, is this going to, tonight we're just voting on funding for these projects. We're not talking about management of the facilities, but I wonder, is it going to come back before us at another time where we'll talk about that?
Yeah, what we are looking for is direction and what to bring back to the council for a vote. So they're good questions to be asking tonight, Mayor. And I guess in the end for tonight, we are looking for direction on what to bring back.
Okay.
A quick follow-up. Lindsay, is it possible to add those additional conditions at this point? Because this is,
Yeah, I don't know that there's a precedent, Klaus can correct me, for individual cities adding conditions. That said, I feel that Plymouth would be perfectly willing to comply with a requirement to participate in the community outreach process. So, through whatever means we can accomplish that kind of accountability and sort of give the comfort that you're looking for, that's going to be happening, because I believe it's going to be happening regardless of whether we made it a condition or not. But Klaus, I don't know if you've got any specific past examples of how we've accommodated individual city requests to add conditions.
Don't believe we have had this come up in the past.
Well, I would just put in, this is in Bellevue. We're the Bellevue Council. I would be supportive of this if we have not only the community engagement, but a commitment to mitigate the impacts and have a safety security plan, as well as the east side entry. So it would be great if we could get some follow-up information on that before we vote. Thanks, which I know it isn't tonight, it's gonna be at a future meeting, but
we'd be happy to go back to the sponsor and talk with them about the request, certainly if that is the request of this body.
Thank you.
And
go ahead.
City Manager, this is Emil. What we can do is the kind of lead department, we can also work with Arch to look back through past projects and try and see if there is any opportunity and what would be the pros and cons of doing any specific conditions in addition to what's been discussed so far.
So I'm hearing this request from Councilmember Robertson. I'm assuming she's not the only one here tonight who would like to see this when it comes back, but I would like to give everybody a chance to comment either yay or nay on her recommendation, as well as ask your own questions. So I'll go through everybody, but Deputy Mayor, go ahead next.
Thank you. And in general, I am in favor of moving this forward. But as I said earlier in my comments, the community engagement piece is really important to me, as well as, just the process that we went through and that we're maybe more familiar with from the CFH perspective with the East Side Men's Shelter. So if there's a model, it's there. And I'd love to see all three of these projects working in coordination. I don't understand why they're all part of this Eastgate campus, so why not all work together? I understand there are different managers or different operating systems, different funding, places in place, but it'd be great if they could all work cohesively together, especially on that community outreach piece. That's very important to me, and would like to see some level of same in terms of the safety and the security that Councilmember Robertson had mentioned. Also, I just wanted to ask Lindsay an additional question. You had mentioned that, this Eastgate campus, and I agree, I want this to be successful. And as Councilmember Robertson said, well, we want it to sing, so we want this to be successful. And you said it was like the first one on the east side like this. And we're hoping for this to be a successful model going forward. But that just raised a question for me. Where else in the country has this kind of campus been very successful? Are there other similar types of campuses that you can point to that had a high level of success?
Well, I think my comment was just about the permanent supportive housing model. That we haven't funded a permanent supportive housing project here on the east side before.
Okay, great. Thank you for clarifying.
Sure.
Okay, Councilmember Stokes.
Yeah, It always bothers me when we start off with an alarmist, oh my God, the sky's falling, we got a problem here, without any real factual basis for it. So I'm glad we're going to examine this. And I don't know, we've been having this same conversation for 5 years now, and I think if we could take a positive approach on this, obviously we're going to have it done safely. Obviously we want it to be successful. Obviously people are going to work together. And to start off with the assumption that it's not planned well, they don't know what they're doing, we want more support, we want more safety for the neighborhood and input and all that is just kind of, it's an alarmist thing that I don't think helps us on this whole piece. So let's get over that and really examine it. And I think we'll find that this is something that needs to be done and can be done well. There are examples of it. It's something that we are getting funding for. And a lot of the 1590, the whole idea of that was to do this, to get people off the street where we have problems with them, people who have concerns, who have medical problems, who have other problems, and work with them. The supportive housing is the key. And you get them out off the streets. They're not going to be staying in the CFH facility permanently. This is what we've been talking about moving to for a long time. And now that we have it, let's don't make the assumption right out of the bat that, oh my God, this is going to be awful, and maybe we don't want it here in Bellevue. We want something in Bellevue that actually deals with the problem and gets people, get help for them. And yes, we will make sure, we'll work with them to make sure that that happens. But I would like to see us take a more positive and hopeful approach to this, because we have an amazing opportunity to do something that is really important for people who really need help. And that's what we're here for.
Thank you.
And we can do this.
Okay, thank you very much. Councilmember Lee.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I started earlier saying how wonderful Archie has done. And they have done a great job because they've worked with the communities. They've done jobs that everybody got a good result out of it. And I think it's done because of all the considerations some of the council members have asked and making sure, and the community has worked up front to ascertain that concerns are being addressed. And I think they provide a great model. And that's why it's been sustained over all these years. And so I think we need to continue to do the same thing. And I believe that, we all understand the importance of affordable housing, including homelessness. And that's why we spent a number of years talking about the homeless shelter, at the Eastgate location. I think that's pretty much everybody agreed to. I don't think it's a question. The question is, how to do it right, how to implement it. And I think we have a good model with farmers. The city is working together with the congregations homeless, and we have an outreach group. We have a community engagement group. We have the process that we're going through. And I think this is already a good model. If the city supports that, we do that. And I heard that Lindsay was saying we don't have this arrangement with the supportive housing folks. And I'm just wondering why not, right? If it's working, it's something the city's policy is, and we're using it as the model to make sure that the community's neighborhoods concerned are addressed. I mentioned how this project would work well, and what Arch has done well is because they have always worked well with neighborhoods. So I think this is a principle that I mentioned that they need to stand firm on. So as a result, I believe that we can have the strings. That's what Councilmember Robertson is talking about. It's not restraints, it's just understanding of where we are. How do we do it? How do we do it right? How do we well? So that we have to support the community, that we don't mess things up. We don't do it in such a way that Arch has been, I'm proud to say it, I'm proud to say one more time, the Citizen Advisory Board you mentioned, Lindsay, I think they are Bellevue residents. They are whichever city's residents where the project is at. They know it, they understand it. I think they would support it because that's the city's policy.
Thanks, Council Member.
So I believe that, this is the time to do that, and I support it. And I think we need to extend whatever is good for policy for Bellevue should be considered, upfront. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Council Member Zahn.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Lindsay, for those comments. So I think what I hear you saying is that the presentation that you gave is the correct one, which is that at the Eastgate location, all 93 units are 0 to 30% AMI and not half 30% and half 60%. I just want to clarify that.
That is correct.
Okay. Thank you for that. I would say that, to me, I appreciate the level of diligence that Arch puts into these projects and finding the right partners for them. And I believe that we in Bellevue can and are the model for how we do things right in so many different areas. And this is one of them. You know, when I think about this, I guess my question to Lindsay would be this. When you look at the funding for this project and what it's going to take to build this supportive housing that is so essential in our community, because we know from talking with Sophia Way and CFH that when we have the community experiencing homelessness ready to move into supportive housing, they don't have the units for people to exit homelessness into. So this is essential for our community. My question is, when you look at the funding model for this, is this sufficient for all of the work that we know we're going to be doing in terms of engagement with the community and supporting the developer in getting this done? Because this level of engagement is going to be resource intensive in order to get this project through planning, development, design, and construction. So has the amount of the ask accounted for all of that?
Well, we certainly aren't directly funding the community engagement. So, you know, of the dollars that are requested here, these are going towards the construction of the project. So that would be one of the things that we would need to discuss with them, is what the level of expectation would be around the intensity of that process and the staffing of it.
Right, because the designers are going to be spending additional time and dollars to do the engagement and explaining the layout and all the different features. So I just think it's important to make sure that your budget accounts for this, so that we're really clear about what it is that it's going to take for this enhanced level of engagement.
So are you saying you support them coming back with some sort of a feedback on that?
Well, I support this project. I just want to make sure that what they're asking for does reflect the level of work it's going to take. So yes.
So the question is, do you support Councilmember Robertson's idea of having them come back with some sort of a good neighbor agreement type proposal?
I would like to understand what they were already planning on doing. So it's one
like
thing
more information on it.
Yeah, it's one thing to say, as Councilmember Stokes, that it's about imposing versus what the team was already intending to do.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Lindsay, you want to answer that? How does a good neighbor agreement differ from what you are already intending to do with the community on this?
Well, I think that's a question for the council member who's proposing the idea of imposing the condition. So
well, we don't know what kind of community outreach you're already planning to do. That's the question to you.
What I'm aware of is that they have been participating in the process that Congregations for the Homeless has been undertaking with the community, so that it's not two separate sets of processes, but they are doing that engagement together.
So for clarification purposes, for the homeless shelter that we have proposed, we have a provision in there that requires a good neighbor agreement where we appoint a committee of community members to do that. And we're in the process of doing that. And I think the question is, can we apply those same guides to this project? Would we use the same group and do it as a whole, or would we have a separate community process? I mean, these, like, nobody knows, and I'm just wondering if somebody can provide clarity or give me a path.
I'm not sure I want to answer that on the spot without having some additional conversation with them. I know the process that was designed for the shelter was extensive and detailed, so I don't want to represent that that's something that is easily replicated or done on a parallel track for this other development.
Okay, so I'm going to go on to Councilmember Barksdale.
All right, thank you, Mayor. You know, when I think about this, I mean, we have sort of a situation, right? We have people, our unhoused neighbors who need housing. I think we agree that we want to make sure that they can be housed. I mean, I know we can't have it, I guess, where people are complaining about, the community members are complaining about our unhoused neighbors, and then we sort of slow the process of providing housing. I would say, and given that this is on the same site as the shelter, and I can't help but think that that conversation is happening as part of that, and it's on the same site. So I'd be, I guess, reluctant to say, let's set up a separate one for the same site for a related project that's in the same, has the same stakeholders, when we need to, I think, move forward with providing that housing. So if there's a way we can leverage the existing work that's happening without creating a new structure, I would support that.
Okay, thank you. So, you know, I like what Councilmember Barksdale said, that we complain about the people who are homeless, and now we're complaining about the way we're going to house them. And I don't want to slow down the process. I do know, because I'm on the Mental Illness and Drug Dependency Advisory Board, that they're doing a lot more collection of data with our homeless population, because A, it allows them to benefit from Medicaid and other funding sources, and B, it allows them to track what goes on with our homeless in a better way that informs us the best way to help them. And so it's not the same. 5 years ago, we had the philosophy that we wouldn't ask them anything. So we didn't think that that was, you know, fair for them. And there was a lot of community concern about that. And it's not that way now. They do ask everything, but you don't throw somebody out because they won't answer. And I know, talking to David Bowling from Congregations for the Homeless, he told me only 1 out of 100 people will refuse to provide that information. So it's not a concern to me. I do not want to slow this process down. I think it's just essential that we get this housing done. And so my question to Emil is, what kind of a process do we have in our city for any neighborhood? And that's my other point is, you know, why would we hold any community to a higher standard than any other neighborhood that we have in Bellevue? We've had terrible things happen in every neighborhood in Bellevue at different times in our lifetime. And it's not something we want to have happen. We do everything we can to prevent it. You know, when things are not going the way we want to in a neighborhood, and how does a community do that? And so how will we deal with it in this Eastgate neighborhood?
Yeah, so I think there's been a lot of good questions tonight, Mayor. I think what I'd like to suggest for council's consideration is that the city manager's office, community development services, and Arch get together, look at what was already being planned for this Eastgate area for all the projects, what was specifically being planned for this funding proposal, and bring information back to you so that we can look at the different facets of the funding request for this annual funding round versus other land use code requirements and how they all interface. Because this has been a discussion at the staff level about how it all fits together. And I think we could benefit by kind of digesting the questions, concerns of council, and come back to you at a upcoming meeting.
Okay, that doesn't answer my question, but that's a nice input. I appreciate that. I do think that, I see you, just hold on for 1 second. I do think that, you know, we need to look at funding of the project and then management of the project, and we need some assurances on the management. So I see Councilmember Robertson, I see Councilmember Stokes. Go ahead, Councilmember Robertson.
Thank you. I just wanted to add a quick clarifying follow-up. And so I am not asking that we slow anything down. I know that Plymouth Housing has been involved with the Good Neighbor Agreement. The difference is that they're not required under our code to get involved in that. They are, but we can't require it under our code because this isn't a conditional use permit project. However, if we're funding them, we can require them to do it as a condition of funding. So jointly with CFH, I'm great. I just want to make sure that it's handled so that they are a good neighbor, that this is a successful project for the neighborhood, but also for the people that are living there, whether they're living here, whether they're in the shelter, or whether they're in the affordable housing next door. So I just want to clarify that for everyone. Thank you for the supportive comments from my colleagues. I look forward to getting the follow-up information from staff. Thanks.
Councilmember Stokes.
Yeah, and I appreciate that approach. I think that's a different than started out with. And I don't think anybody has any question with that. Have we looked into whatever the conditions are in the other projects we're talking about in the package, by the way? So the point is, I think that I just hope we keep a very positive, and I appreciate the way you put it to the end, Councilmember, that this is just the way we look at things, and we're looking at it in a way that will be supportive of both the community and the people who are in need. That's what we're looking for. And if we can keep it at that level and know that we're going to do things right, and we have a great opportunity to make this work together, we can do it. Otherwise, we just are going to be kind of caught in the same old loop we've been in for some time. So now's the time to move forward and do it the right way. So I think we're agreed on that.
So thank you. So Emil, I think you gave good direction there, gave us a good path for moving forward. I think that we'd all like to see this come back with a robust discussion on what a community engagement might look like for a project like this, or what kind of plans we have for these two. We already know what we have for the shelter, so we're not talking about that. But we'd like to know what that looks like, and what the pros and cons are, and what the impacts would be, both financially and on the timeline. So I think that's pretty unanimous to move forward and bring something back with that information as well. Does that sound like clear direction to you?
It does.
Okay, good. Thank you very much for the conversation. Okay, on to land use. Mr. Miyake.
Yeah, in front of you this evening is consideration of the Eastgate Office Park rezone. As you know, this is a process 3 quasi-judicial matter in which the hearing examiner issues a recommendation to the council. This evening is the initial consideration of this rezone. No actions being sought by the council this evening, but staff will return at a future meeting to request final action. But here tonight for a staff report, we are joined by Kathy Girl, our city attorney, as well as Liz Stead and Drew Falson from our Development Services Department. So Kathy.
Thank you, Mr. Miyake. Good evening, Mayor and Council members. As Mr. Miyake indicated, the rezone application before you tonight is a process 3 land use application. The hearing examiner did hold a public hearing and did recommend approval of this rezone with conditions, and there was no appeal filed of that recommendation. So the matter is now here, as Mr. Miyake indicated to you tonight, not for a final decision, but it's here as a study session item to give you an overview of the project and sort of the lay of the land, if you will, and a high level overview. Your decision will need to be made based on the hearing examiner's record, and that record is now available to you in the council library for council members to begin review of it. And as Mr. Miyake indicated, this will come back to you with a proposed ordinance for final action in probably at the March 8th meeting in a couple of weeks. Because no appeal was filed, Liz Stead and Drew Folsom from the Development Services Department are here to provide you with a brief overview of the project using information from the hearing examiner's record. But before I turn it over to them, because this is quasi-judicial and the appearance of fairness doctrine applies, Mayor, I would recommend that at this point, council members be given the opportunity to disclose on the record any ex parte communications that they may have had either with the applicant or with any other party supporting or opposing the rezone application.
Okay, so if any of you have anything to disclose, can you please raise your hand? And I can see everybody, and I don't see any hands raised, so we can move on.
Okay, so with that, Liz, I will turn this over to you.
Wonderful. Thank you, City Attorney Garla. I am also have with me Drew Folsom, one of our senior land use planner, and he's going to share his PowerPoint. So Mayor Robinson, Deputy Mayor Neuenhaus, council members, thank you for your time tonight to present this. I am here to talk about some background information regarding a request to rezone property located at 15325 Southeast 30th Place. As City Attorney Garla noted, the application in question was presented to the hearing examiner as a recommendation for approval with conditions from the Development Services Department on December 17th of 2020. And Drew Folsom, the planner that's with us tonight, did do that presentation as well. You are seeing the PowerPoint that was presented, so it may be in a format that is not as familiar for most of the council meetings. The hearing examiner did concur with the DSD recommendation of approval with conditions and added his recommendation of approval with conditions of the project on January 4th of 2021. And as was mentioned, no appeals of the hearing examiner recommendation have been received. I'm going to turn it over to Drew and he'll further present the project to you.
Thank you, Liz. General information. The rezone is being requested to promote redevelopment and revitalization of the existing site to allow for continued economic growth for the community. The council adopted comprehensive plan change from office and community business to limited business via Ordinance 6393 on December 17th, 2017. The rezone is warranted to achieve consistency with the comprehensive plan. There is no development planned at this time for the site. Vicinity. The project site is located in the Eastgate sub-area. Auto dealerships in the Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints LDS Church border the property to the west. A hotel and multiple retail uses, predominantly restaurants, border the property to the southeast. Office development borders the property to the east. The district headquarters of the Washington State Patrol borders the property to the northeast. A non-vehicular multi-purpose path borders the property to the north. And single-family residential development is located north of the path. Zoning. The site is within the office and community business zoning districts. Surrounding properties are community business, office, and R5 residential zones. The R5 zones to the northwest and northeast are developed with non-residential uses, the LDS Church and the Washington State Patrol. The R5 district directly north of the 30-foot multi-purpose path is developed with single-family homes. The north 270 feet of the property is within the transition area design district and provides transition to the residentially developed single-family zoning district located 300 feet to the north. Site description. The site is approximately 14 acres and is within the Eastgate sub-area. The site is located west of 156th Avenue Southeast, and a small portion of the site is adjacent to Southeast Eastgate Way. Access to the site is gained via Southeast 30th Place, a private roadway connecting to 156th Avenue Southeast to the east. Currently, the site is developed with 4 low-rise office buildings and surface and underground parking. The remainder of the site is heavily vegetated with trees and shrubs. The property moderately slopes upward from the southeast to the northeast and does not contain any critical areas. Public comment. Notice the application was published on November 21st, 2019, and a public meeting was held on December 3rd, 2019. Staff received comments via emails from citizens. All comments and responses from the applicant and staff can be found in the project file. 2 members of the public spoke at the public hearing examiner public hearing, one in favor of the proposal and one opposed. Comments submitted during staff review concern many topics such as noticing, use, height, intensity development, noise, the extension of 153rd, tree retention, and OOB2's proximity to single family. The staff report discusses the noticing the property owners within 500 feet of the rezone in the comprehensive plan amendment. A detailed chart of the proposed dimensional requirements for OOB and OOB2 zones are in the staff report, pages 5 through 6, as well as a discussion of the dimensional requirements, limitations on height within the area providing single-family transition to the residential properties to the north. The applicant provided a response to uses and noise and proposed the prohibition of retail, eating and drinking and hotel motel uses and dark sky lighting requirements within the transition area more restrictive than those required by the land use code. The extension of 153rd is not proposed as part of this project. Tree retention and landscaping requirements are the same for office, OOB, and OOB2 zoning districts. There are several examples of OOB2 zones adjacent to single-family zones, including R5 zones in Bellevue, including areas within Eastgate where OOB2 and R5 zoned areas are adjacent. Zoning and land use. Staff provided a zoning comparison between the current office zoning, the alternative office limited business zoning, and the proposed office limited business 2 zoning on pages 5 through 6. The most notable difference being floor area ratio, height, and allowed uses. Maximum floor area ratio will increase from 0.5 to 0.21, and the maximum height will increase from 30 to 40 feet to 75 feet with bonuses. However, it is noticed in the staff report there are limitations to the maximum height for OOB2 zoned property within the transition area. The maximum height cannot exceed the maximum height of the single family district to the north when measured from the existing grade of their south property line. The differences in dimensional standards and allowed uses between OOB and OOB2 zones are lessened by the application of the transition area design requirements and conditions agreed by the applicant, which limit height, uses, and light within 300 feet of the residentially developed neighborhood. Decision criteria. The decision criteria for the rezone approval found in Land Use Code 20.30a can be found on pages 1 through 13 of the staff report. In summary, the proposal enhances the public health, safety, and welfare of the city by allowing a greater mix of complementary land uses, modest but effective motorized and non-motorized transportation improvements, and appropriate increased development intensity to meet the demand for continued job growth and economic growth. It is warranted to achieve consistency with the comprehensive plan, which was amended from office to OOB in December 2017, and it is not materially detrimental to uses or property in the immediate vicinity. Recommended conditions. Staff recommends council approve the project with the conditions found in the staff report on page 14. The hearing examiner adopted the staff report conditions, which can be found on page 5 of his recommendation. The conditions include retail, eating and drinking, and hotel motel uses are prohibited in the transition area, which is the area within 300 feet of the residentially zoned and developed properties to the north. And structures developed within this transition area shall use dark sky compliant light fixtures to address light and glare concerns. Process. The proposal is a site-specific rezone following the Process 3 framework for decision. Process 3 decisions are quasi-judicial decisions made by the City Council. Any questions regarding the project should be directed to the City Attorney. That concludes the staff presentation. Thank you for your time.
And again, we are not looking for a decision tonight. And if you do have any questions between now and when this is back before you in a couple of weeks, please do reach out. Feel free to reach out to me, and I'll be happy to try to answer the questions so that we can ensure that we're staying within the record and following the process.
Okay, thank you. So that's going to move us on to other ordinances. I feel like everybody needs to take a quick break or something. So I'm going to have us resume at 8 o'clock here. And we're all here. Perfect. Okay, so we're going to see something again that we saw a few weeks ago, and we'll look for votes tonight. So Mr. Miyake, would you like to introduce, please?
Sure, Mayor. These two ordinances, 6567 and 6568, are two, the matters related to these were, as you mentioned, both in front of you couple weeks ago, and these represent the Planning Commission recommendations, both of which were discussed at the council meetings and were directed by the council to bring them back for tonight for formal action. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Mike Brennan, and we're going to provide you a brief staff report and answer any questions you might have in advance of you taking them up for action this evening. Mike?
Thank you, Mr. Miyake. Good evening, Mayor Robinson, Deputy Mayor Newhouse, and members of the council. As Mr. Miyake mentioned, we're bringing forward 2 ordinances tonight to amend the land use code, asking for council's final action on both of these ordinances. The amendments support the creation of affordable housing and housing options, which are aligned with the City Council's affordable housing strategy. We'll do each of these as a separate staff report, and then I think ask for council action. So the first ordinance is a land use code amendment that would remove the 3-year waiting period required for the construction of an ADU in new homes. And for more detail on that, I'll hand it over to Trisna Tanis, who is joining me, as well as Nick Whipple from the Development Services Department. Trisna.
Thank you, Mike. Good evening, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, council members, City Manager Miyake, and those attending tonight. As Mike mentioned, after staff's presentation and council deliberation, we are asking for council to adopt ordinance number 6567. For our agenda tonight, we are giving a brief explanation of the recommended accessory dwelling unit or ADU land use code amendment or LUCA. We'll describe anticipated outcomes from this ordinance, and then we'll talk about our engagement with the public as well as the process that we've gone through for this land use code amendment, and recap with reiterating what we're seeking from council tonight. So this recommended ADU LUCA amends the regulations in the land use code to remove the 3-year wait period to establish an ADU within new construction. In other words, after assuming that this ordinance is adopted, an ADU will be able to be installed and registered at the same time of initial building construction. This is a targeted update. Our permitting and construction data shows that in 2020, the city had 5 registrations for new ADUs, and in 2019, there were 8. Whereas the city had 149 new single family building permits that were issued. And out of those 149 permits, 25% included space and elements to make it easier to establish an ADU in the future. So this recommended LUCA would remove that 3-year wait before, and an applicant or property owner could fully add a second kitchen and register an ADU at the same time as initial building construction. The 3-year wait has been a barrier to adding this type of housing unit and option within the city. So this code amendment removes this barrier so that a property owner may install an ADU in an efficient and cost-effective manner. And at the same time, they are constructing their new home. They would be able to register and add this additional housing unit as soon as they get their final inspection and occupancy approval. This LUCA advances, as Mike mentioned, the city's affordable housing strategy, which was adopted in 2017, specifically strategy B2, which is to update the city's ADU regulations. The LUCA accomplishes the creation of housing choices. This narrow change in the city's ADU regulations is anticipated to make ADUs more feasible to build and encourage construction of this type of housing option in residential neighborhoods. ADUs provide a diversity in housing type, size, and geographic location, as well as cultural options, therefore helping to ensure all residents are welcomed and allow for long-term residents to remain in Bellevue. I'm now going to turn over the presentation to Nick Whipple to go through the public engagement and the process for this LUCA. Nick?
Thank you, and good evening, Mayor Robinson, Deputy Mayor Neuenhuis, and members of the council. I'll briefly cover the public engagement for this LUCA, and then orient us on where we are in the LUCA process, and then turn it back to Mike to conclude the staff presentation. So for the ADU LUCA, staff did provide 3 modes of outreach for the ordinance that being considered this evening. So our process for land use code requirements, those include notice of application and notice of public hearing. Both of those requirements were followed. We also implemented direct engagement and feedback with our stakeholders, which include the Master Builders Association of King and Snohomish County. It also includes property owners that would be potential applicants, just concerned residents that have contacted the city or interested members of the public. We did hear, staff heard from many property owners that are interested in this LUCA getting adopted. Some that actually would register for an ADU once that path becomes available. And as mentioned in our previous study session, we did also receive some comments regarding other elements or other provisions of the land use code as they relate to ADUs, but the purpose of this land use code amendment is to remove that 3-year wait period, and we did see broad support for that. We also had an online presence. So we launched a webpage to provide information related to this code amendment, as well as contact information for public comment. So the website was updated on a regular basis to ensure that the latest and most accurate information was available to the public. Next slide, please. So this slide is just to orient us to where we are at with the LUCA process. So as mentioned earlier, the Planning Commission was introduced to this land use code amendment in December and held their public hearing in January. The recommended LUCA was brought to City Council 2 weeks ago on February 1st, at which point the Council directed staff to prepare the ordinance for final adoption. That following night, on February 2nd, staff presented the land use code amendment to the East Bellevue Community Council during their courtesy hearing. The EBCC had good discussion on the LUCA, and the community council members were supportive of this LUCA. Tonight, we are here seeking council action to adopt ordinance number 6567. And if this ordinance is adopted by council, then we will return to the East Bellevue Community Council on March 2nd, so they may hold their public hearing to approve or disapprove the ordinance within their jurisdiction. Next slide, please. Now I'll turn it back to Mike to conclude the staff presentation.
Thank you, Nick. So that does conclude our presentation this evening. We are seeking council action on ordinance 6567, and we are here to answer any questions that you may have.
Okay, thank you. So anybody have questions or comments? If you raise your hand, I can see you. I'm not seeing any. So is there a motion to adopt ordinance 6567?
I move to adopt ordinance 6567, amending land use code chapter 20.20.120, accessory dwelling units, to remove the 3-year wait period to establish an accessory dwelling unit in new single family home construction.
Second.
Gotcha. You got it.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, thank you. So we'll move on, Mike, with ordinance 6068.
Thank you, Mayor. This is an amendment to the land use code in the sections dealing with subdivisions. This would allow for unit lot subdivisions that essentially allows for the construction of townhomes on real property, so they could be sold as fee simple. It would allow the ownership of both the townhome and the property below. So for more information on the details of this proposed ordinance, I will hand it to Trisna. Trisna.
Thanks again, Mike. Good evening again, everyone. As Mike noted, we are here to present a brief staff report on the unit lot subdivision land use code amendment. After staff's presentation and council deliberation, we are asking council to adopt ordinance number 6568. Our agenda includes, again, giving a brief explanation of the recommended LUCA, describing anticipated outcomes from this ordinance, and then provide a summary of the public engagement as well as the LUCA process that we've gone through. And we'll close with asking direction from or action from council. So this LUCA amends the platting and subdivision and the short plat and short subdivision chapters in the land use code to allow for unit lot subdivisions. This means that the unit lot subdivisions would allow the creation of a parent lot, and that development standards such as setbacks, lot coverage would apply to that parent lot, and to then enable building townhouses on these unit lots so that they may be owned in fee simple rather than as a condo ownership. We note that there's no zoning change so that unit lot subdivisions and the resulting townhouses would only be allowed in land use districts where multifamily development may be built. This LUCA also responds to the city's affordable housing strategy, specifically strategy B, to create a variety of housing choices within the city. This LUCA minimizes the barriers identified by the development community. The barriers are those that are related to construction and mortgage financing associated with condo style development, so that we'll be encouraging greater housing density in Bellevue and a diversity of housing types. Unit lot subdivisions will create individual fee simple townhouses, as I mentioned earlier, without changing that allowed density, also without changing any appearance to the townhouse development that would already be allowed by current zoning requirements. So I'm now going to turn the presentation to Nick to go through the public engagement and the LUCA process. Nick.
Thank you, and good evening again. Similar to the ADU LUCA, this land use code amendment also had the process for requirements. So the process for requirements for notice of application, SEPA notification with this land use code amendment, the notice of public hearing, and then the final SEPA threshold determination were required, and all process for requirements were followed. We implemented enhanced engagement for this as well, which included direct engagement and feedback. So we did have, staff had an ongoing dialogue with the Master Builders Association of King and Snohomish Counties, developers, as well as potential applicants regarding the proposed amendments. And then lastly, we encouraged engagement through our online presence. So we did launch a web page to provide information related to the code amendment, as well as contact information. And we did update that webpage frequently as it progressed through the LUCA process. Next slide, please. And very similar slide to the last presentation. We introduced this land use code amendment to the Planning Commission in December. They held their public hearing in January. The recommended LUCA was brought to the City Council on February 1st. Council directed staff to prepare the ordinance for final adoption, which brings us here. But I guess before that, we did take it the following day to the East Bellevue Community Council. The East Bellevue Community Council held their courtesy hearing. The EBCC discussed the land use code amendment, and all community council members were supportive of this unit lot subdivision ordinance. So tonight we are seeking council action to adopt Ordinance 6568. If the ordinance is adopted by council, then we will return to the EBCC on March 2nd for their public hearing.
Great, thank you very much. So I'll get my view back. Here we go. Do we have any comments or questions on Ordinance 6568? Not seeing any. Is there a motion to approve?
I move to adopt Ordinance 6568, establishing provisions in the Land Use Code, Chapter 20.45A, platting and subdivisions, and Chapter 20.45B, short plats and short subdivisions for unit lot subdivisions within land use districts where multifamily development is currently allowed.
Okay.
I heard a second from Councilmember Stokes. It's all or nothing. All right. All those in favor say aye. 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 Any opposed? Okay, that brings us, that passes. And that brings us to the end of our meeting. I want to thank everybody for a great meeting, and I will see you next week. We are adjourned.
All right. See you.